It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 at Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, a big shout-out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. You know, every day I just out of habit, I say, we got a great show for you here today. Well, this week is crazy. It is the 1st of May, and it just seems like there is news dropping like crazy. You are definitely going to want to tune into Friday's show when we do the RealAg Issues panel, because I don't know how we're going to fit it all into an hour. We've got stuff happening with biofuels. Big news yesterday out of the U.S. on the GREET model and how that potentially impacts ethanol and other biofuel feedstocks for sure. We're still trying to sort out how it impacts canola, whether that's in the Northern Plains or Western Canadian canola. Not a lot of answers on that so far, but we're working hard on it. We got big news, and I'll talk about this in the top ag news stories of the day at the end of the show in regards to Canada and requirements on testing for HPAI on lactating dairy cows coming into Canada. So that's big news. We've also got to talk today about some trade stuff. So we're going to be joined by Nathan Phinney. He is president of the Canadian Cattle Association. He's fresh off a trip to South Korea talking trade, and he's home on the ranch in New Brunswick today. He's going to be headed off to Mexico right away, too, for a big trilateral meeting with other U.S. NCBA as well as the Mexican beef group as well. So we've got Andrea Kent, past president of RI Canada. That's the Canadian Biofuel Lobby Organization. Andrea's going to talk about how ethanol was not really mentioned in the budget a couple weeks ago in Canada. Was that a mission on purpose or just a bit of an oversight by Minister Freeland? And then we'll also hit on the GREET model news from yesterday as well. We've also got a product spotlight. Big news. This is big news in the area of crop insurance. We'll be joined by Bruce Lowe. He is with AgDirect Hail. And he's got a big announcement today. Big announcement. Pretty cool stuff. And what's interesting is that some of the idea around this came out of what you said regarding through the Canadian Farmer Sentiment Index in terms of where farmers sit and your outlook for the year. So really, AgDirect Hail are dropping some big news today to help out you and your farm and make sure you get the risk management coverage from a hail perspective that you need in Western Canada. And we'll have the time, like I said, the time for the top ag news stories of the day. If you have any feedback, we'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms, or you can call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Today, I'm broadcasting from beautiful Kamloops, British Columbia. Yes, it won't surprise many of you. I'm here for a baseball tournament for my youngest son. It is Best of the West this week, which is going to be great. The weather looks great. It'll be nice, and some baseball throughout each day. I'm looking forward to watching him and the Vauxhall Jets play, which they actually won this tournament last year. All the top baseball academies in Canada coming together for a tournament. It's always fun. It's a great tournament on an annual basis. But it was neat flying into Kamloops. And you can see all the ranch land and just, this is such a beautiful area. I really wish we could make it out here more and tour some of those ranches and some of the production, and just really this is you see the sign to like Merritt, BC, and just all the ranching activity that happens in this area, and how it also, some of these parts have really been impacted by forest fires. That's also a major issue out this way. And as we're flying, you can see some of the damage. So yeah, it's a beautiful area. If you've never been out to Kamloops, BC, highly encourage you to do so, to take in some of the sites and lots of tourism, but also lots of agricultural activity too that probably doesn't get talked about quite enough, especially even here on RealAg Radio. So we need to fix that, do more of it. Hey, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to be speaking of beef. We're going to talk to Nathan Phinney. He is president of the Canadian Cattle Association. He just got back from South Korea. Canada has a tariff disadvantage compared to the U.S. and Australia, and it's hurting our exports to South Korea, which is a very important market. We need to fix this. How do we do it? He's going to talk about when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Choose Viatude fungicide and unleash best-in-class sclerotinia protection in canola and premium protection against white mold in soybeans. Viatude contains a powerful premix of Onmira Active and Prothioconazole. This unique combo delivers high-performance disease control, crop safety, mix compatibility, resistance management, and advanced mobility for excellent coverage and superior plant protection. Choose Viatude fungicide for stronger, more vigorous crops.
Today we're talking to Belgium's Field Crop Product Manager. It is Brad Awanku. What benefits can a grower expect when they apply manipulator PGR in their cereals?
What we see is that after application, it adjusts apical dominance. The main stem and tiller heads will be more even than without the application. This will help to increase harvest efficiency. It also, what we see is maximum yields with that due to the efficient use of nutrients. So they've done some work showing that you'll get better yields with the use of a PGR-like manipulator. And of course, the other benefit is reduced lodging risk. Just with the shorter stems and stronger stems, we see plants standing better with the application of manipulator PGR. It's registered for use in all cereals. Bring wheat, of course, in durum wheat. We are registered in oats and barley. There are some restrictions with barley, especially with some of the maltsters not accepting because there are some MRLs that aren't established in certain markets around the world.
And that website is belgiumcanada.com. And welcome back to RealAg Radio. You know, for balanced nutrition with micronutrients, the best answer is WolfTrax DDP from Koch Agronomic Services. To learn how WolfTrax can ensure nutrient availability through a crop's growth cycle, visit kochag.ca. And we are going to talk about what's going on in the world of the beef industry. Lots to chat about here, including a fresh off a trip to South Korea on a trade mission. We're talking to Nathan Phinney. He is president of the Canadian Cattle Association based out of New Brunswick. How's it going today, Nathan?
Great, Shaun. How are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing pretty good. Okay, so you just got back from South Korea. You were yourself, Jennifer Babcock from CCA, and I'm assuming some of the others in some of the associations were in South Korea. Very important market for Canadian proteins. You went along with Trade Minister Ng. What's your takeaway from the trip?
Yeah, thanks, Shaun. Yeah, we had all stakeholders there from the beef industry. Canada Beef was there. President Eric Bienvenue, he was there as well as YG, who was based out of South Korea for Canada Beef. It's a market that we have, as an industry, have wanted more than what we're getting for a long time. It's been on our wish list. We see the value in it, and I think they really see the value and desire our Canadian product. And we were there to help showcase it and let them know that we're willing to do whatever we need to help facilitate getting more product over there.
Well, what's preventing us from getting more product over there?
It's not the desire, I can tell you that. We met with some retailers and some restaurant chain owners, and they love our product. They love, how Canadian beef is well marbled. They love, the food safety that comes with it. But the biggest issue right now that we're dealing with is when we signed our bilateral agreement some years ago, we were at a very, very high tariff rate, and that's eventually going to phase out over time down to zero. But right now, the U.S. has an 8% tariff advantage over us, and Australia has right around 5%. So cheaper product just because of the tariff rate is the reason why there's more of the U.S. and Australia taking up the marketplace than it is the Canadian beef.
So what needs to be done to lower those tariff rates for Canadian product going into South Korea?
Yeah, so that was the reason why we were over there, mainly to, CCA was with Trade Minister Ng, was to talk about that and hear from, importers and retailers and wholesalers that want our product and more of it, but that being the main issue. So, I think that's something that we continue to push on. I know the agreements are signed and binding, but we also saw a couple of years ago those tariff rates, just due to food security reasons around COVID, they dropped them down to zero, and our shipments went up 165% during that small time. Then they were put back in place, the year after, and we started to see the decline again from that high. So we're going to continue to work diligently on, trying to get those down quicker. To match the U.S. would be ideal, so that we can build these relationships, we can get the markets established, and go in there with a level playing field.
Does the U.S. have the advantage on tariffs? I can't remember. Did they negotiate a bilateral agreement directly with South Korea to get to those rates?
They did, yeah. So the U.S. has a bilateral agreement. Canada has a bilateral agreement, as does Australia. And right now, the U.S. it comes down by 2.3% a year. The U.S. is at 8% currently, and Canada is at 16% as of this year. So you can see the difference just in the costing of that, and that's what we consistently heard. So the door wasn't shut. I think there's opportunity there to align ourselves and go that route. One thing that with this Asian Indo-Pacific market, it's all relationship building. So if you can build those solid foundational relationships with, between the suppliers and the industry back here, that goes a long way. So what we're saying is we need to be there at the table, a lot with the U.S. at the same time, and building these relationships, because they'll serve you well going forward.
Curious if some of those processors or the retail chains in South Korea brought up what's happening regarding HPAI and dairy cattle, and whether that worked its way into some of your beef trade discussions over there.
Yeah, no, it didn't come up at all over there. It's predominantly being found in milk in the U.S. right now, and as we're following it very, very closely, it hasn't been detected or found in beef industries. So, we as an industry are continuing to work with CFIA and staying, in daily, if not hourly, contact with our counterpart NCBA and the USDA, staying on top of this and monitoring it, and I think just like everything, you're learning more as you go. But right now, everything is not a health issue, and so we're just trying to make sure everything's mitigated, and continue to keep these industries as strong as possible.
When you are having those conversations with CFIA, what's your messaging to them? Is CCA comfortable with the level of surveillance? What level of surveillance is in place, or what's the ask?
Yeah, no, and I mean, as it turns out, or it seems from USDA right now, it's not animal-to-animal transmission. So, we're continuing to monitor. There were states that monitored beef herds around some of these dairy herds, and there was no detection found. Ultimately, avian influenza, it seems to be certain times of year that it is at a certain high, and that happens a lot of the time when the migration is going on with migratory birds. So, if it's an airborne pathogen or a virus, you've got however many hundreds of millions of ducks and geese, migratory birds coming back and forth across the border. So we can stay diligent on the ground and make sure we're monitoring that. But, it's like any other virus, it has many ways it can travel. So we're going to continue to work with them and monitor our industries and ensure that everything's the up and up and safe for everything moving forward.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact number, but I think there's like 3,600 dairy animals that came north out of the U.S. into Canada in 2023. We know that there is a tremendous amount of animal flow back and forth, integrated value chain in the beef sector. So working country to country, it kind of reminds me a little bit of ASF, right? And some of the proactive work that was done there between Canada and the U.S. That's the kind of cooperation that we need. So it's good to hear that is happening.
Yes.
On another point, next week, or maybe later this week, you're headed to Mexico. There's no rest for the wicked when you're in Nathan Phinney's position. So what's the point of the mission to Mexico?
So it's CNOG's annual meeting in Hermosillo. So we'll be going down with the U.S. NCBA and CCA will be going there, and we'll have a trilateral meeting set up. It's a pretty chock full agenda, but one of the first things that's on the agenda that will be discussed is the voluntary product to U.S. We know it's in place, and we know that it's coming into force in January of 26. But both Mexico and Canada are reiterating to the U.S. that we're not enthused about the passing of that, and that we're going to continue to monitor. And a lot of pre-work is going to go into the next year and a half, working towards a smooth review of the CUSMA deal. The work doesn't begin the day that the deal's up for review. So we're gonna continue to push forward and work and try to make sure that our largest trading partner, the borders stay open and we have free and flowing trade like we've all experienced and what both sides of the border need to have.
Yeah, July 1st of 2026, all three partners in that CUSMA USMCA deal must provide, their where they sit on it, whether they're fine with the current agreement or they want to put it up for review or reopening of it. Hanging out with Minister Ng for a little bit of time in South Korea. Did you get any indication you want to break any news here? How do you think Canada feels about the CUSMA USMCA deal at this point?
I think we're trusted trading partners. We're best friends. We know that. And like all relationships, there are times there are the few ups and downs and issues that need to be worked out. We're going to continue to reiterate that. And for the beef industry, the integrated market can't be talked about enough of how important that is, and trying not to put up barriers to prevent that. So, we got some work to do here. There's a private members bill, as we all know, that's going on in the Senate right now, and that's Bill 282, which is, is protection of supply management. And not that we're making an agriculture versus agriculture, but anything like that could potentially handcuff some negotiators going into these deals and not being able to lay everything on the table, could have a negative outcome potentially for anybody in industry, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. So, the work's going to continue on those fronts, and see if we can get them resolved in the next year and a half, and make sure that the transition and the review goes as smoothly as possible.
Yeah. Nathan, before I let you go, how are things on the ranch there in New Brunswick?
Good. There's the green grass is coming, and there's starting to be a little bit of seed put in the ground. So from all the moisture that we did have here, we have been lucky enough to get some sunshine and a little bit of drier weather. So, things here look pretty good. Beef prices are exceptional. So, there's some optimism here for sure.
Well, I appreciate you carving out some time for us here. I know you got a lot of work to do on the ranch before you have to catch a plane to Mexico. So, hey, thanks so much. All the best to you.
No problem. Anytime, Shaun. Thank you.
That is Nathan Phinney. He is president at the Canadian Cattle Association. When we come back on RealAg Radio, we got a product spotlight with Bruce Lowe of AgDirect Hail. He's got a big announcement that he wants to break right here on this show, and we'll talk about it when we come back. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
A If you have a growing list of questions about getting more from your fields, know that Koch Agronomic Services has an answer for every acre. With a full spectrum of nutrient management, nutrient protection, and seed enhancement options, Koch Agronomic Services offers a deep portfolio of agronomically effective products. Each designed to enhance yield potential, all available to help solve your problems. Find the answer that's right for your acres. Start by visiting kochag.ca. That's KOCH ag.ca.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, RealAgriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch Wheat Pete's Word every Wednesday on RealAgriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify. And welcome back to RealAg Radio. It's now time for a product spotlight with AgDirect Hail, and we're talking to AgDirect Hail's Executive Vice President. It is Bruce Lowe. Hey, Bruce, how's it going?
Awesome, Shaun. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the show here. So, Bruce, AgDirect Hail has become a real household name in the crop hail insurance industry over the past decade. Time flies for sure. What makes you different from some of the other crop hail insurance companies that are out there?
Well, it's a great question, Shaun. When we first started this thing going back just over 10 years ago, our focus was we wanted to save hardworking prairie farmers money on their crop hail insurance. And we looked at the model. Really, there was one cost that farmers pay that we thought that we can eliminate, and that's the broker cost. If you use a broker to buy your purchase your crop hail insurance, the time you're spending upwards of 8 or 10% of your premium dollar going to the broker in the form of commission. So we set up an online model where farmers can go directly to our website, purchase directly from AgDirect. We are a private line company, just like our competitors that they are probably used to buying. And at the time, our rates were in that 10 to 15% lower than the industry. And that was welcome news for farmers, because let's face it, the farmers face a lot of costs and input costs, and they thought if they can save money by doing the purchase themselves online, why not? Now, fast forward, we're not the only one doing it anymore, which, you talk about imitation being the best form of flattery. We're completely okay with that, because we think we have other strengths that we'll get into in a little bit, that being our compelling customer service and certainly our claims handling, in my opinion, is second to none.
Well, and you got a big announcement today. This is something I've been waiting for. You had sort of teased it to me a little over a month ago, and today you can talk about it. So what's the big announcement?
Today's the day. We are pleased and thrilled, Shaun, to when we looked at what farmers are facing this day, this year in particular, with some of the lower commodity prices, higher interest rates. We said, what can we do at AgDirect Hail? And we got support right up and down to do a complete 2024 rate hold. And what that means is farmers that purchase AgDirect will be buying at 2023 rates or less. We did not raise a single rate in over 8,500 townships across the prairies this year, whether or not you had hail. And let's face it, farmers know, kiss of death, you have hail, oh, there goes my rates, or my neighbor has hail, there goes my rates. Not this year. We're holding rates at 2023 levels.
That's pretty big news. There you go. Okay, that's great. I'm sure that's going to make the audience pretty happy and interested in what AgDirect Hail has to offer. Now, obviously, when it comes to hail insurance, price is important. That is a component of the where you're purchasing from. So you got that taken care of. Obviously, those are very competitive rates you're talking about there. What are some of the other things that need to be considered when you're picking your provider?
Gosh, you're intuitive, Shaun. There's no question rates is just a door opener. And we measure ourselves not just about the race, but we measure ourselves at the end of every season on our customer service and our claims handling, our ease of purchase online, and we consistently rank in the 90+% of customer satisfaction. So when we look at, someone wants to buy coverage and it's 11:30 at night and they need coverage on before midnight to have their policy on for noon the following day, and there's stormy weather forecasted, possible thunderstorms, hail the next afternoon. And for some reason, their credit card doesn't want to go through, or some reason they have a question about their coverage or a deductible question, they can call our toll-free line. Someone's going to pick up that phone and someone's going to help them. They have hail. Wow, what next? They file a claim online. Our claims team is in constant contact with them. They know exactly where they are in the process. And I believe that not only do we have the best claims manager and claims coordinator on the prairies, but our team of adjusters are men and women that are dedicated to doing a thorough job. They're extremely knowledgeable, credited loss adjusters. And we say it every time. I have one message to our adjuster. You put a check in that farmer's hand that fairly represents their loss. That's the end of the story. Every one of us has to sleep at AgDirect. And I sleep well at night knowing, as our claims manager does, knowing that we've treated the farmer fairly. We've now in 11, this is our 11th season, in 10 seasons, we've probably done, I'm going to ballpark in around 7,000 claims. If a farmer's not happy with our adjustment, they can take it to arbitration, Shaun. And in those 7,000 plus claims, we've had 5 customers that refused to sign a proof of loss and took us to arbitration. That's quite an astounding record from my perspective. And that speaks volume to the team we have and what we're trying to do for our hardworking prairie farmers.
Yeah. So Bruce, if somebody wants more information about AgDirect Hail, or they want to figure out maybe what their rate would be, where do they go?
Well, as you know, the rates I mentioned pre-show that the rates are available starting next week. We have a lot of farmers across the prairies have registered, which simply means setting up an email and a password, and that gives them the opportunity to log on and check rates and apply for coverage when they're ready. If they haven't done that, call us toll-free, 1-855-686-5596, or Google AgDirect Hail. Click on the website and you'll see that I'm a visitor or I'm a returning customer. Click on a visitor, set up an email and a password, and call us if you need a hand. But again, the website is so completely easy and intuitive to use, but we're there if they need us.
Great stuff. Hey, Bruce, thanks a lot for joining us here today on RealAg Radio for this product spotlight.
Appreciate everything you do for hardworking farmers right across the prairie, Shaun. You and your team are amazing over there at RealAg. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Bruce. That is Bruce Lowe. He's Executive Vice President with AgDirect Hail. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio right after this.
Dad, we missed the window for a PGR in our cereals.
Why didn't you add it to the herbicide?
What?
With Manipulator PGR, we can apply as early as 1 tiller. Just add it to the herbicide, no separate pass.
Don't miss out. Manipulator PGR is proven in wheat, durum, barley, and oats to shorten plants and even out the main stem and tillers. This results in reduced lodging risk, improved harvest efficiency, and increased yield. Talk to your crop protection retailer for more info and to confirm acceptable tank mixes.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year, on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by BASF and Syngenta Canada.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Wednesday, midweek edition of the show. Hey, want to use a PGR in your cereals but no time for a separate pass? Manipulator PGR can be applied as early as 1 tiller. Just add it to your herbicide to reduce lodging risk, increase harvest efficiency, and maximize yields. Talk to your local retailer for more information and to confirm acceptable tank mixes. joining us to talk about what's going on in the world of biofuels. And let me tell you, the last 2 weeks, there has been a ton of stuff when it comes to biofuels in Canada and the U.S. We are joined right now by Andrea Kent. She is past president and on the board of directors of RI Canada. Andrea, it's great to chat with you.
Yeah, thanks so much for the invite.
Okay, let's start with the Canadian budget. And one of the stories that we had posted was there was information there about there was money there for biofuels, but there was an omission of ethanol. Get us up to speed here on what has happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And the budget is about 2 weeks old, and you started saying everything is kind of happening right now in biofuels, right? So in some ways it feels like it's been longer, but the budget is still pretty fresh. So I think we'll start with what was really positive, and that is that biofuels support. And, the language, I think, in the budget was actually securing Canadian biofuels, really strong signal. And, I think, let's be honest, it was kind of a politically noisy period that we're in right now. So even seeing that kind of cut through and seeing that support listed for biofuels and the economic tone of it, really, really positive. And that's something that we've been asking for really. I mean, like the US IRA is going to be 2 years old this summer, right? So a lot of work going into that, both from biofuel producers and growers. So seeing it was great. Seeing the fact that they did take care in listing some biofuels in the budget language, but not listing ethanol, absolutely jumped out at us. Right. And it jumped out at some people just across the industry as well, too. So, even oil and gas and kind of integrated low carbon fuel producers, they took note as well. So I think when you look at it as, kind of an omission, I think it's fair to say it was glaring. I'm not sure how intentional it was on the part of government. So I am kind of optimistic that we will see the final language correct that ethanol omission. But I think it's really important, not just kind of like odd man out, but I think what really, really matters here is that when you look at domestic ethanol production, it's pivotal both for the current market and, kind of current agriculture and job security here that comes from domestic ethanol production. But it's also really explicit and kind of dictating forward-looking investments, looking at alcohol to jet and some of the other technologies that, that Canada wants here as well, right? And when you look at what other jurisdictions are doing, there's a lot of attention on, the generosity of the subsidies of the US IRA, but ethanol is in there. Ethanol is a foundational element in terms of how they've structured their programs and incentives. So not seeing it mirrored in the Canadian language, that was really, kind of what we called out. And like I said, I think that there is some, optimism that is going to be corrected in the final, kind of program language, but really important to kind of keep the press on until we see it, right? Like an omission on paper needs to be fixed on paper.
What if it was intentional?
I think that's going to be offside from a lot of people, just, in terms of affordability. Ethanol is less than gasoline. So ignoring it and its benefits from just, kind of like a consumer perspective doesn't make sense. I think looking at it from an investment and kind of a global market perspective, right? Seeing, ethanol not in the gas tank, but maybe in a jet fuel tank, right? Like that's not how other jurisdictions are looking at this. They're looking at it as a forward path of ethanol in general. They're not segmenting it out that way. So I think that would be, another kind of interest in terms of coming at the fix. And then, finally as well too, it's a make or buy situation. So when you look at when you look at kind of where the government has brought us up into this point with how it's addressed its biofuels policies, they've been really, really focused on the use of biofuel, right? Because that's where the climate benefits, that's where the GHG benefits accrue. Like wherever that fuel is used, you're going to get that climate benefit. The economic benefit only comes where the fuel's produced, right? And that's what I think people really clued into with the US IRA. Like this is capacity driven. This is an industrial policy. It's geared at, onshoring and expanding its production. So right now, we have a great demand side policy, and it could be filled with U.S. ethanol, right? You need to kind of make sure that anyone who really cares about domestic benefits and the economic benefits doesn't exclude kind of ethanol.
And Canada already is, I think, the largest purchaser of U.S. ethanol. So we're already doing a lot of that. I think if you were to ask, a lot of Canadians, and I don't have, this actual quantitative data in front of me, but you said, would you rather us produce the ethanol in Canada or import U.S. ethanol? Probably a lot of them would say, we probably should produce some here. Like that would be kind of a good thing. I think that's the, kind of the rational kind of, view of it, right? Yeah.
We have trade flows, and looking at what, we're a driving nation, right? Like it's transportation heavy. People drive. I've done it several times today already, and it's like it's not even noon, right? When we're speaking, and I've been in my car like 5 times already today. So I think when you look at just programs that seek to change behavior versus programs that seek to address something by optimizing things that we can already use, make them here already at home. I think that's where a lot of people are kind of naturally oriented. Like I would agree with that for sure. I think, the balance here is that imports in and of themselves aren't bad. Like we're a trading nation. Like we do that very, very naturally. We have an integrated market with the US. That isn't the problem. The problem is making sure that we don't relinquish and surrender what we're capable of making here at home in the process, right? So that's the balance.
It's not an all or nothing scenario. It's about achieving both. It's
totally.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. And we also, it was yesterday on Tuesday of this week, we finally heard from, on the U.S. side of the border, the details on tax incentives from the IRA, as we've been mentioning. The IRA just seems to keep on coming up, related to SAF, and a lot of people are focusing on ethanol and how those tax incentives, what do you have to do to qualify for them? A lot of pushback, and it seems potentially a pretty high bar. When you look at what we heard yesterday, how would you describe the impact on the ethanol industry?
Well, I think the positive, again, headline here is that progress is being made in terms of unrolling the requirements for accessing credits and incentives under the US IRA. I think when you kind of look at the phases of the US IRA, which is, again, going to be 2 this summer, people really kind of were, I think the first impression, like we were all kind of taken aback by the generosity. So much money. Right.
Yeah, a lot of money.
Yeah, like just everybody, I think, was a little bit gobsmacked with it. It was like a game changer, absolutely. And then, you kind of heard industry and looking at the clarity aspect of it, right? So it's like, what does this really mean? We're waiting for, again, like you mentioned, the life cycle assessment model through the US IRS, which is, a pretty strong signal in terms of how financially oriented this policy is, right? So waiting for clarity, waiting to see what that looked like. And then yesterday afternoon, we got like a first real solid look at it. And now I think people are, digging through it pretty furiously. It's intricate, it's complex, but now the issue is really the accessibility, right? So it went from like generosity to clarity, and now we're looking at the accessibility behind it. Headline: innovation gets rewarded, right? Doing better is where it's trying to attract the investment. But looking at some of the details, right, it is a high bar. It introduces this concept of bundling, requiring, all 3 agricultural practices to be bundled. So rather than giving a credit for like 1 or 2 of them in some cases, how feasible that's going to be by the time that, these credits are listed to expire for growers, I think is definitely something. And then, looking at the guidance, which I haven't been able to fully get through or digest. But, you know, there's also some limitations there on things like renewable natural gas, right? And I think some assumptions in terms of how that could be built or kind of like rejigged, right? Now it looks like it's going to be a lot more limiting than initially thought. Yeah, and similar to the conversation we were just having about the budget related to the emission of ethanol and the, you know, choices being made. You know, I've heard a couple different people say, you know, an ethanol producer based on this high bar for the corn producer, an ethanol producer would be better off to just import Brazilian ethanol and move on. Mm-hmm. And that feels like a similar sort of situation in a way. I think a lot of times when I'm speaking to my colleagues over in the States, you realize like we're not alone in these challenges, right? Like there is there is a lot of similarity, even though sometimes like the depth and the scope and the generosity of these policies and the political stripes behind them can differ. At the end of the day, the reality, the objectives, and kind of the challenges are going to be very, very similar. In kind of looking at, you know, kind of pre-US IRA, kind of like pre-Canadian CFR even, looking at life cycle analysis, it wasn't anywhere near as complex and as intricate as it is today. It really just kind of did have a bit of a carbon metric to it, but like it's a legit financial tool now. And I think where the evolution of life cycle analysis is going, the more kind of producers and growers can work together, not just to kind of figure out what's required and what needs to be done, but also the unintended consequences, really, really crucial. And the better that feedback between, you know, biofuels producers and growers and policymakers can be, because I don't think anyone, you know, as a regulator sits down and tries to disadvantage domestic growers and producers. A lot of times it's just the data sets that are selected, kind of some of the choices that are made, the scientific assumptions, right? That's where things kind of start to fall apart. Any indication on how, you know, canola, whether that's, you know, we can have U.S. produced canola, of course, there's over 1 million acres in North Dakota, but there's obviously 20 million acres plus in Western Canada, very interested in the SAF market in the U.S. So based on what we heard here this week out of the U.S., is there any positives there for Western Canadian canola? I think we absolutely have a pretty strong confirmation that the market is being built out, that there is a strong intention to build out that market and the market demand associated with it. I think, you know, kind of the similar boat in terms of like having to dig through what some of the caveats and specificity around bundling and other things look like. But as always, right, I don't like saying the devil's in the details. I'm an optimist, so success is in the details. But, you know, kind of the preliminary conversations that I've had, you know, is responding positively to the market signal, but still kind of, you know, trying to figure out the same issues that we just touched on as well, too, right? Okay. We've been talking to Andrea Kent. She is past president of RI Canada. Hey, Andrea, thanks so much for joining us. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Hey, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio with the top ag news stories of the day right after this.
These days, the Canadian federal government and multinational food companies are investing hundreds of millions to support BMPs on Canadian farms. But here's the thing, nobody knows your operation better than you do. These programs need your feedback on what you want and what you need. The conversation is happening on Facebook Messenger. Do you have 5 to 10 minutes to chat today? Visit getyourvoiceheard.ca. Your feedback matters.
I'm Lindsay Smith from RealAgriculture.com. Join me Monday nights for The Agronomist, a 1-hour live and interactive show broadcast across YouTube, Facebook, and X. Monday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, I host expert agronomists from all over the country to give you answers to some of the toughest agronomic questions. Join us live or catch the replay Tuesday morning. That's The Agronomist with me, Lindsay Smith, Monday nights live at 8 p.m. Eastern.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Wednesday. Shaun Haney, your host. Hey, I want to encourage you to go to RealAgriculture.com and check out all of our great content covering all these different stories we're chatting about. We can't fit everything into this show, so we encourage you to check out the website. You can also go to realagriculture.com/subscribe and subscribe to our free daily e-newsletters that come out every single morning. It's what you need to know for the day ahead. Lots of agronomy, equipment stuff, farm policy, markets. So lots of stuff to engage in every day, videos and podcasts and written stories. So encourage you to check that out. Let's get to the top ag news stories of the day. And as I mentioned, today's been a very, very busy news day. What's gained a lot of attention is the Canada's Auditor General, very critical, the federal government's effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in agriculture, an independent report released on Tuesday. So the audit found Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada has failed to design, implement, and then track plans for how the agriculture sector will contribute to Canada's 2030 and 2050 greenhouse gas reduction commitments. The report cites many shortcomings, including a lack of clear targets, poor data collection, program delays, and incomplete verification and monitoring. A couple people described it to me from the agricultural sector as scathing, is one way that a couple people said. The report provides new details on AFC's implementation of these programs and policies and included the following shortcomings and conclusions. Here's a couple. The department had no strategy to meet its expected contributions to reductions of greenhouse gas emissions, no strategy on climate change mitigation for the agricultural sector. Programs' emission reduction contributions toward fertilizer and methane targets are not identified. The department had limited results and poor results measurement. Results achieved were limited by delays in program implementation. Missing or non-finalized performance targets for climate change mitigation programs. And unreliable and incomplete results measurement, verification, and monitoring of reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. Not very good. So, yeah, and politically, you got to wonder, you got to think. This government has talked about how the environment is number one for them. This is why we have a carbon tax. And being able to execute has definitely been a problem. So in some ways, it's been this is to agricultural sector's benefit, I think, because they haven't put in some of the crazy programming they've required to meet some of the targets they put on the board. But it is another example, to that point, of the government saying, here's our goal, and having really no viable plan. Now, there's like the ideological utopian plan that very difficult to implement, but they put the goal on the board, and then how do we get there? Well, we don't really know how, and it may not even be possible. So very, very, you can check out the full story at realagriculture.com. In other news, we need to talk about the budget approval. So the story in the Globe and Mail, the Liberal government is separating proposed capital gains tax measures from its budget bill in what some say is a political attempt to force the opposition Conservatives to take a stand on the controversial measure. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland sidestepped questions at a press conference on Tuesday as to why she had excluded the capital gains tax changes tabled in the April 16th budget from a motion tabled in Parliament to implement a spending plan. She said, "We are absolutely committed to the capital gains measures," and said a separate bill would be forthcoming with the measures. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has said his party, which is polling far ahead of the governing Liberals, would vote against the budget, but hasn't explicitly addressed the capital gains tax move, which the government claims would only affect 0.13% of Canadians a year on the wealthy end of the spectrum. I'll tell you, this capital gains tax increase, it has got massive pushback from the business community. Doctors speaking out heavily against it. I think it's not a political loss if conservatives speak out against this capital gains tax. I really do. I unless the polling is saying otherwise, but my gut would tell me that they'll vote against that too, because of being more so branded pro-business. The U.S. government said on Monday it's collecting samples of ground beef at retail stores in states with the outbreaks of bird flu in dairy cows for testing, but remains confident that the meat supply is safe. The other thing that we can tell you is there's changes to how Canada is going to address testing of lactating dairy cows coming out of the U.S. into Canada. This is from the CFIA's website. Due to the outbreak of HPAI in dairy cattle in the U.S., the Canadian Food Inspection Agency will require an addendum to the export certificates of cattle imported under the import policy requirements for breeding cattle imported from the United States to Canada. This will apply to export certificates issued on or after April 29th, 2024. So the addendum to export certificate for breeding cattle from the United States of America must certify that the lactating dairy cows listed above have tested negative by PCR for influenza A virus at the APHIS-approved National Animal Health Laboratory Network within 7 days of export. The lactating dairy cows were found positive, have completed a 60-day waiting period, and have been retested with a negative result. And finally, the lactating dairy cows have not been on a premises where HPAI has been detected during the 60 days immediately preceding the exportation. So that's big news out of CFIA as of yesterday. Odds of higher cash cattle trading fading. Feedlots moved some cattle in the northern market in the U.S. around 185 early this week, roughly steady with a week ago. Given the sharp pressure on cattle futures, Packers' hefty purchases last week, and negative cutting margins, chances for higher cash cattle prices seem to have vanished. Most cash sources now expect steady to weaker cash prices this week. So that's something to definitely pay attention to on the cattle side of the equation. Good news, Port of Baltimore anticipates reopening of a temporary shipping channel at a greater depth to facilitate commercial vessel traffic around May 10th. This comes as salvage efforts continue to remove the Dolly freighter, which has been obstructing the channel since it collided with a key support pillar of the Francis Scott Key Bridge on March 26th. That seems so long ago already. The accident resulted in the bridge collapsing, of course, into the river, and the deaths of 6 construction workers tragically. On the U.S. Farm Bill note, which is kind of the never-ending process, the slow-moving new Farm Bill is now on a far faster track. The House GOP new Farm Bill proposals were officially released in a 5-page summary released by the Ag Committee. And, of course, we're expecting the chairman's mark on May 23rd, which Jim Wiesmeyer talked about on this show last week from Pro Farmer. Over in the Senate, Ag Chair Debbie Stabenow later today will release a section-by-section summary of Senate Farm Bill proposals. So Farm Bill moving along. Commentary coming out of some farm groups. This is from the Export Dairy Federation, saying as both committees continue their consideration of policies for the next Farm Bill, dairy exporters are eager to see a doubling of funding for the Market Access Program and the Foreign Market Development Program to support further expansion of the sale of American-made dairy products around the world to ensure that the bill establishes a robust new process for safeguarding common food and beverage names in international markets and to enhance USDA's participation in the decision-making process regarding global food aid programs. So also, you can take out of that, the U.S. is definitely looking to expand dairy exports. And once again, just sort of like we heard with Nathan Phinney, all eyes on that July 1st of 2026 with the U.S. MCA CUSMA agreement. Finally, planting progress. USDA issued its 5th crop progress report for the 2024 planting season. Both crops of corn and soybeans are now a handful of percentage points ahead of the 5-year average. 3 states, North Dakota, 6% planted, Ohio at 6%, and Pennsylvania, 2% planted the first respective acres of corn in the past week. Ohio also got on the scoreboard in soybeans with 7% planted since April 22nd. So far, 12 states out of 18 total reported acres of corn planted are ahead of the 5-year average. That story from AgWeb. If you have any feedback on today's show, we'd love to hear from you. You can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can find us across all the different social media platforms as Real Agriculture. Or why not call the Real Ag feedback line? That number is 855-776-6147. Hey, thanks so much for joining us here today, getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio. And, of course, everybody, we will chat again tomorrow. Cheers.